when we're actually shooting the scene, then there's room for improvising. But usually we think most of all of how a scene will start and how it will end and how it will cut into the next scene. That's like the first thing we look at. And just looking at this reminded me of how, when we're designing it, how we talk in terms of sound and things like, okay, and then we'll be in the close-up, and then I'll cut to opening the door, you know, things like that. And so it's thought out like that, how it will look and sound, the shots, you know. So that's a big part of it. And I approach the camera work in a curious way. What I mean by that is that when I'm shooting, when we're actually rolling the camera, I just let myself kind of be immersed in what's happening and just be curious about what I'd like to see, you know. When one of the characters kind of, maybe I see that they're feeling or thinking something, maybe they're thinking about what's happening, then I go to the other person, or I go to the hand, or you know, I just try to
very documentary kind of.
Yeah, and be organic to what they're experiencing, let's say, the characters, and be curious to, if I were there amongst them, what I'd want to see, you know. So that's how I approach the shots. And what happens is, we design the specific shots, but once the camera rolls, Alejandro doesn't cut. He just lets the whole scene go through, no matter what. Even if it's an insert of a door or handle or whatever, he won't cut. So then I'm forced to, you know, look for something else. So then, even though a shot was designed for a close-up, it may end up in a wide shot. So then he gets incredible amounts of coverage, which makes the lighting certainly challenging. But again, I approach it as in a very, you know, based on the real light sources, or scenes like the border crossing. That was built, actually. It was it's not a real border crossing. We shot that in Mexico, and so I designed the lighting, the industrial lighting of the place, and said, okay, for example, you didn't really see the end right now, but even the street lighting, as they approached the crossing in Mexico, was mercury vapor, so I used the green light, and when they cross to the other side, it's sodium vapor, which is sort of orange in color. So there were little things like that that, you know, I like to play with, and while designing the lighting with, you know, or a big challenge for me was that scene when they're in the car and there's no light source really, except the dashboard and the headlights, and that's all. So it was, I looked for ways of making it look unlit. But still, when you're in a car in the desert and you look at the back seat, you see something, but you don't see a light source. So that was what I was going for, the very, very soft, ambient, underexposed light for the back seat. And the front seat, it was like the bounce off the road of the headlights, plus the dashboard. And when I was explaining this idea to Alejandro, he was skeptical. He'd say, but no, you don't get light off the pavement. And I actually put him in a car at night in the desert, and I turn on the headlights and look at me. And I'll turn off the headlights, look at me. You know, so it was, you know.
Well, it's minimal, but it feels very natural.
When there's no other source, that's what you see. That's what it is. Anyway, so that was interesting. And the club, the whole scene of the nightclub and before it was really exciting to design and get ourselves into the characters. And I was describing how Ang Lee is so specific about the way he designs the shots. With Alejandro, it's much more organic, and we do it together. And shots like when she's in the swing, you know, that was an idea I had of rigging the camera to the swing itself and feeling that you're swinging with her. So
are you trying that in the moment, or is that?
No, that was planned out, and all those things are designed in advance. But one thing specific about Japan was I wanted to represent visually the idea of not hearing. So each section of the film was done in a whole different way. Morocco was 16 millimeter, Super 16. The idea was to get the grain, obviously, and the feeling of, you know, the character of Kate Blanchett. She's always complaining, you know, she's worried about the dirt and all that, so the grain for me represented that. And for Japan, we used anamorphic lenses. That was 35 millimeter. Even though it's, as you see, not a widescreen, anamorphic lenses are designed to create a widescreen framing, but we kept the 185 framing that throughout the movie, but used anamorphic lenses because of the depth of field. It's much shallower depth of field, and the shallow focus has a very special feeling to it. It's kind of liquid, and so in the club, and especially after the club, and even before it, the backgrounds are very, very soft focus, and for me that represents not hearing what's around you visually. So it's like, this character is so immersed in her own world, and she can't hear what's going on around. So in a way, visually, with the backgrounds being out of focus, that was the reason I chose to do that. So these are things that ideas that I come up with, sometimes through references or photos or just concepts, and then I talk to Alejandro about them, and if he kind of likes the concept, then I shoot tests, and many tests with Alejandro. I shoot a lot of tests, and then show him what the result is. And the club was fun. All the lighting was designed by us, and the idea I wanted to use combinations of two colors and changing throughout. So when they enter the club, it's orange and green, and that was simply based on one of the clubs we saw, and I saw that color combination that I liked. When they go to they go up the stairs, and we started out with a pink and green combination, which was inspired on some still photography we saw, but also, you know, it's a whole thing. But the movie, unifying color for the movie was red elements of red. Different types of red. In Mexico, remember the red dress that she wears, and there are different, but it's a primary red. So every time you see red in the Mexican scenes, it's primary. In Morocco, we used sort of an umber red, so that was mostly in the production design. And some of the costumes, or even the bus, the seats were that color, things like that. In Japan, it was pink or purplish red, let's say. So that's why I used that red combined with green for that part of the club. Then I changed to yellow and red, which, strangely enough, just a quick anecdote, was inspired on a music video that I saw that had that combination of color, yellow and red. And it turns out that now the director I'm working with, Francis Lawrence, had directed this music video at Audio Slave with those colors. And I loved it, and I showed it to Alejandro and showed it to everybody. Let's do these colors. And anyway, so that was, now I learned that Francis directed that video. So anyway, that's funny. It's serendipity, yeah. And then, as she realizes that, her friend is the one who got the guy, then we go into the just strobing mode, colorless. So that was all designed, and it was so much fun to come up with it, test it, and then when we were shooting it, I was operating the camera, and again, we shot every angle you see, well, most every angle, were started with them downstairs in the lockers, went upstairs with the camera, and then just continued the scene until we rolled out 400 feet.
Oh wow! So it was all one long take.
Every angle. So okay, now let's focus on the friend. So okay, we started downstairs and ended up on the friend. Now let's do a version where you focus on her. Okay, so on her. So it was physically exhausting, but it was really exciting. My gaffer was with the lighting person. He was in like a little cubicle, and he could see me down there. So I would give him signals with my free hand when to change the lighting. When I saw the action went into a different mode, then I'd go like that, and he'd change to yellow and red, and then then I'd go like that.
While you're holding the camera?
Yeah. So that was real fun. I mean, it was tiring, but it was like, dancing with the camera.
It's amazing.
And what's most amazing, I must say, is that it's in focus. It's impossible. This focus puller, Arturo Castañeda from Mexico, that did Amores Perros and collaborated with me on several movies, he can't work here because of the union and all that. But whenever it's not in the US, I take him, and he's a magician. How in the world can you keep, I was just, panning wherever I thought, and no marks, and lights is flashing, and he nailed it. Incredible. So anyway, that was...
Well, I mean, it really shows all the pre-production and planning that you do beforehand. Now, even hearing you talk about this, well, obviously the sound design and the editing, it just you can totally see how this all fits together perfectly with this film.